We're in the middle of a series and we're asking this one question that has such a profound impact in all of our lives. And the question is, what now? What now? What do I do when I don't know what to do? What do I do when I'm struggling in this situation and I really don't know how to go forward and I don't know what to do? And we're learning one prayer, and this one prayer is so bold and so radical. It's a prayer that changes your life, and it's a prayer that I've prayed this week. Has been a tough week for me, and so it's a prayer that I prayed over and over and over again. It's found in 1 Samuel 3:9. And here's the prayer, and I just want us to say it out loud in all of our locations. Again, if you're watching online, if you're one of our Journey Church Anywhere homes, or whether you're watching in the middle of a restaurant, I want you to say it out loud. Can we do that? Let's say it together. Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. I want you to say it like you mean it, like you really want it, all right? Let's say it again. Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. That's our heart. Lord, I don't want to go through life based on my own ability. God, I want you to speak. And what I'm trying to do through this series is giving us the ability to open our ears to hear, to tune into the very voice of God, how God wants to speak to us. Because I believe that God wants to speak to you. I believe that. I believe one of the greatest tragedies that we live in the Christian walk is we don't know how to listen to the voice of God. And so what I want to talk about is one question. Shout one question. One question that if you begin to ask, will begin to give you the clarity that you need to go forward no matter what you're facing. I mean, imagine if you could ask one question, just one question, no matter if you're dealing with custody disputes, if you're doing, what school do I go to? UCF, FSU, Stetson, or wherever you're thinking about. Do I marry her? Do I marry her? Do I take this job? Do I not take this job? What do I do? What if there was one question that if you would ask, it would give you incredible clarity to know what to do no matter what you're going through, no matter how messy the situation is, no matter how difficult the situation is, no matter how depressed and overwhelmed and stressed out you are, one question that changes everything, and it's found right here in John chapter 13 is where we're going to be at. In John 13, the setting is that this is the last meal that Jesus is going to have with his disciples. And he gathers them together, and there's a lot of confusion in the room. I mean, the tension is high because Jesus has talked about that this will be the last time he's going to enter into Jerusalem, and that in Jerusalem he's actually going to die. And so they're freaking out because they're going, Jesus, if you die, who's going to lead us? And Jesus, if you leave, who's going to lead? And what's going to go on? And at this moment, the tension is so incredibly high. I can't express to you how in that moment that all the tension is there, and everybody in the room is going, okay, what now? What do we do now? And they're stressed out and they're worried. And at this moment, Jesus gathers them together from this last meal, the Last Supper. And here's what he said, John 13:1. It was just before Passover festival that Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave the world and go to the Father. And having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the very end. Do you realize he looks at you and he looks at me and says, I'm going to love you to the very end. I'm going to bring you to the completion. I'm not going to just give up on you. I'm going to love you all the way through. That's good to know in my life, because there's times when people say, well, I'm with you, but then when it gets tough, they run away from you. But Jesus says, I'm not running away from you. I'm going to guide you all the way through. I'm going to love you. And his love for us is some sentimental Hallmark Channel type of love. His love for us is the willing to sacrifice his life on the cross as our substitute atonement for our sins so that we can have a relationship with God. So he says, I'm going to love you to the very end. And so the evening meal at that time was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. And Jesus knew. Well, what did you know, Jesus? Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he'd come from God, and that he's returning to God. Now, this is interesting because it said, at this point, Jesus knows all things. So at this point, he looks around the table and he knows that Judas is going to betray him. He knows not only is Judas going to betray him, he also knows that every one of his closest followers, before that night will be over, before the end of that night, every single one of them will run from him. He also knows that the religious leaders who should uphold religion and should uphold what is morally right are going to actually betray him and hurt him and do injustice. The government that was supposed to set up to protect the innocent was actually going to be the government that was going to turn around and kill an innocent man. And Jesus knew all this, and at the same time he knew all this, he also at that moment, in that very moment, he knew that he had all the power to do whatever he wanted to do, whenever he wanted to do it, however he wanted to do it in. At this point, Jesus is not just the most powerful person in Jerusalem. He's not the most powerful person in all of Palestine. He's more than that. He's not the most powerful person in all the world. He's the most powerful person in all of existence at this very moment. And I think to myself, what would I do if I knew that my best friend was going to betray me? That if I knew the government was going to come against me? That if I knew the religious, pious people were going to take my name and discredit it, and everybody who called me a friend would no longer follow me? What would I do if I had all that power? And it just got me thinking, what would you do if you had all that power? Because see, in the moments where we don't know what to do, we go, I know what I would do. I would leverage my power to get what I wanted. I would leverage my power to get what I wanted, how I wanted it, when I wanted it. And Jesus at this moment, he knew all that was about to happen, and he knew at this point he had all the power. But I want to show you what he did. This is so incredible. What he did changes everything. It says in verse 4, so he got up, not to hurt him, not to force his way, but he got up from the meal and he took off his outer clothing and he wrapped a towel around his waist. And after that, he poured some water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel, and he wrapped it around himself. Now see, when we think of a meal, we think we're going to sit down at a table and sit on a chair and just relax and maybe have a little barbecue and it'd be great. But in Jesus' time, there was no tables, there were no chairs. You would actually lean against each other. So you'd be leaning this way and bro's feet would be leaning against your face. And so you're like, I don't know if that's blue cheese or Peter's feet, but I smell something in this place. And so every time you would go, if you were going to eat a food next to a brother whose feet are there, you would want to make sure his feet were what? Washed, were clean. And so somebody, when they would have a gathering, somebody would be designated as the foot washer. Somebody would get up and they'd wash everybody's feet because you would have some clean feet sitting next to your clean area. Now, I think about it and that grosses me out because I hate feet. I can't stand it. I can't stand it. I'd be like, I'm taking to go. Uber. I'm having my last meal by an Uber driver, DoorDash. But at this very moment, no one has taken the appropriate steps to do this. This was a servant's job. This was somebody who you would look down upon, but yet now Jesus, the most highest elevated position, actually gets down to the lowest level. And he begins to love them. He begins to serve them. He begins to wash their feet. See, no one wanted to sacrifice or do anything because they were so consumed on their comfort, their wants, their desires, except Jesus. Now, this doesn't set well for Peter. Look at verse 6. So he came to Simon Peter, who said to him, Lord, are you really going to wash my feet? And Jesus replied, you don't realize now what I'm doing, but later you'll understand. No, said Peter, you shall never wash my feet. And Jesus answered, he said, hold on, unless I wash you, you have no part within me. Peter, I can't lead you and I can't guide you unless I serve you. I'm trying to get you to see something, Peter. Then Lord, Simon Peter replied, don't just stop at my feet. I love Peter, right? Don't just stop at my feet. Wash my whole body then. Start with my hands, go all the way to my head. Just get the whole thing in, Jesus. And Jesus says, no, Peter, you don't understand. No. This isn't about being clean. For those who have had a bath, those who've trusted in me, he's saying, for those who've placed their faith in me, I only need to wash their feet. Their whole body's already clean, and you are clean, though not everyone's clean. He looks at Judas. For he knew who was going to betray him, and that was why he said, not everyone was clean. And when he finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. And he said, do you understand what I've done for you, he asked. Now it's interesting, and here's what the Spirit began to speak when I read that. Jesus says, maybe in the moment when you're so consumed on what do I do now? What do I do now? Maybe there's something you missed. Maybe, in fact, what you missed is the most important thing. That maybe the thing that you should be concentrating on, we don't even concentrate on because we miss it in the moment. In times when pressure is so intense, when uncertainty is so great, Jesus says, what if you missed it? What if there's a question that you're missing that's beyond the question you've been asking? He says in verse 13, he said, you call me teacher and you call me Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am, and I'm about to teach you. Now that I, your Lord and your teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. For I've set for you an example that you should do as I have done for you. You see, you didn't move because you were just focused on you. But I want you to see what I'm asking you to do is move beyond just focusing on you. I'm trying to get you to lift up your eyes in the moment of the pressure, in the moment of temptation, not just to focus on what you want and how you want it. He says, I'm trying to get you to see something, that there's a better way. Verse 16, for very truly I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed, not if you just think about them, not if you just hypothesize about them, not if you just dream about them, not if you just pray about them. No. He says, blessed would be you if you actually do them. If you actually do what I'm trying to get you to do, if you will actually see what I'm trying to get you to see, that I'm trying to get you to see something that's beyond what just you're seeing at this moment. And then I'll go to verse 34. Well, what do you want us to see, Jesus? A new command I give to you. Love one another. So just as I have loved you, so you must also love one another. So Jesus, you mean this isn't like feet washing, like literally we don't have to wash people's feet all the time? And Jesus says, yeah, that's what I'm saying. So I go, praise God. Thank you, Jesus. Unless it's called to wash somebody's feet. Unless you see a need, then wash their feet. You see, he's looking at us saying, don't get so caught up in, hey, this direct method. Don't get so caught up in this. I'm trying to get you to understand there's a greater principle here. I'm trying to get you to see, I'm calling you to serve one another by loving one another. I'm calling you to say what needs to be said. I'm calling you to do what needs to be done. Give what needs to be given. I'm calling you to live with a mindset that's beyond you and begin to focus on how can God, you begin to use me to love other people. So he says, I want you to love as I have loved you. And by this, everyone will know. Everyone will know. Everyone will what? Know that you are my disciples. How will we know? By our love one for another. So how will people know that I'm a follower of Christ? By my love. But how will I also know where he is leading me, where he's directing me in life? He says, by my love one for another. Now here's what's fascinating. Jesus takes this word love that we think of like sappy rom-coms, or we think Hallmark movies, and we think all these things, and we take this word love and we treat it as an emotion. And we treat this feeling of love and we think it's a feeling, but Jesus says it's not a feeling. Love is actually a decision that you have to make. Love is a decision that you make every single day as you get out of bed. That love is not something just stands there, but love actually begins to move. Love moves. It moves towards the brokenness. It moves towards the hurt. It moves towards the things that are there. The love always is moving. In fact, I love it. You know, right over Pine Ridge High School, they allowed us, when we launched our Pine Ridge, our Deltona location, they allowed us to put the word love moves right over the auditorium. So every time students gather together in the auditorium, they see the word love moves. Why? Because we want to be known by the way that we love. That's what Jesus called us to do. That we're called to love people. We're called to go out with love. We're called to live with love. We're called to go forward with love. To love, no matter what, Jesus says, no matter what you do, no matter what you're known for, I want you to be known above anything else by your love one for another. I want you to see it. So when we're in those certain times, when we're in those seasons where we go, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. Jesus, I want to tell you what you need to do. When you don't know what to do, when you're freaking out, God, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Jesus, when you don't know what to do, ask the question that changes everything. What would love do? When you don't know what to do and you're wondering, okay, do I do this or do I do that? What do I do? What do I do? And the things that keep us up at night, the things that messes with us, the thing that just drives us crazy, the things that make us think, am I going to need to get on Prozac or not? All those things that we go through. Jesus says, I want to be very, very clear. When you don't know what to do, ask, what would love do? He says, I want this to be the grid of every decision that you're making. Every decision that you think of, if you are a follower of me, when you think of the decisions that you have to face, Jesus says, this is what I want to be the underlying question of your life. What would love do? What would love do? What would love do in everything I do? What would love 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 do? When you don't know what to do, this question changes everything. Why is this question so important? Why is this question so essential? First, if you're taking notes, write this down. Here's why. Because love opens your life to actually hear from God. You see, Jesus says the most important decision that you can ever make before you ever make a decision is you have to decide to love. But before you get caught up in all the other decisions, before you do the pros and cons and what you need to do, and I don't understand, and what do I do? Jesus says, before you do any of that, the most important decision you can actually make is a decision to love. Because when we're in situations that we go, I don't know what to do, Jesus is very clear. Look at verse 5. He says, I want to be very clear on what I want you to do. I have set for you an example that you should do as I have done. So we go, God, don't know if you hear me or not, but I'm here and I really don't know what to do. I don't know what to do about this school. I don't know what to do about this relationship. I don't know what to do about this financial decision. I don't know what to do. And God says, yeah, you know what to do. You already know what to do. You do what I want you to do, which is to love. When you get this, I'm telling you, it frees you to understand the simplicity of what Christ is teaching. Don't complicate it. See, we try to complicate it so much. And Jesus says, I'm trying to give you an example. I want to practically show you when you're at a crossroads and you do not know what to do. I want to show you, yeah, you do. Because you know that I want you to love. No matter who, no matter what you're facing, I want you to live with love. That Jesus, in this moment, he comes and the disciples are so overwhelmed. They're so freaking out. They're like, we don't know what to do. We don't know what to do. We don't know what to do. And Jesus says, the reason you don't know what to do is because you're just consumed on you. When you become consumed on you, you stop tuning out the very thing that God is trying to lead you into. So when I go into the question, and all the question I have in my mind is, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Then the emphasis on what do I do? What do I do? What about me? What about me? What about me? And that's the trap that gets you in trouble. The reason there's so much anxiety in your question making, the reason there's so much stress in the decisions that you're making is because you're asking the wrong question. You're thinking to yourself, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Instead of asking a better question, God, what does love do in this very moment? Because that question gives me some freedom to go forward. See, I know what God is calling me to do because I know that he speaks to me in love. When my kids were younger, this is when I knew that kids from the very beginning were broken and sinful. Very early on, no one had to teach them this. Because very early on, they began to play their mom against me. And it was sinister. It was like civil war broke out of my house. Because my kids would come to me when they were younger and they would look at me and say, hey, Dad, can we stay up late? And I would say to them, what did your mom say? And they said, well, Mom said we could stay up as late as we wanted to, and she didn't mind that we do whatever we wanted to. And I looked at them, I said, your mom really said that? Because I know your mama. And I know your mama would never say anything like that. And so I would just give them that stare, that stare that parents give, like, And at that moment, I said, well, Mom really didn't say that. And I said, I know Mama didn't really say that because I know how Mama speaks. My question is, here it is. Do you know how God speaks? The language of God is the language of love. But in order to hear him, you have to begin to tune into that station. This past week, it was a crazy week. And so I was going and I realized I didn't grab my phone. Now, not only in that moment did I begin to panic, because I forget what it's like to be traveling without a phone. For years of my life, though, I traveled without a phone. But at the moment, I'm freaking out because I'm going, what if I on the side of the road, I don't have a phone? What's going to happen? But then I realized the other greater tragedy of this is I didn't have my music to listen to when I drove. And so I turned on the radio and I get with this, and I'm like, what's that? It's been so long since I've listened to the radio. And so I'm driving down and I go, I know there's a Christian radio station. What is it? Z, 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 Z. No, there's no Z on this turn dial. Okay, 88. Oh, I know it's 88, Z88. And so I said, well, I turned to Z88 and it was 88.9 and it was, I said, well, that's not it. And so I hit it again, Z88.8. And it was a mariachi band. I was like, oh, that sounds good, but that's not what I was looking for. So I turned it again, 87, 86. And 86 was like this grunge band. Like, rah! I was like, that's not it. No. And so I keep turning. And until I get to 88.3. And in that moment, it's clear. Now, was it there all the time? It wasn't until I locked into the right frequency that I could begin to hear the right thing. So many times the reason you're not hearing from God is because you're asking the wrong question. You're tuned into the wrong frequency. See, when all I'm asking is a question, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? We tune into the frequency that begins to say, well, I know what I'll do. I'll do what I want to do. And so then you begin to get, in that moment, you crank it up. You go, well, okay, I'm going to listen to this. And at that moment, you begin to listen to it. And what you begin to listen to is the reality of not the word of God, because God speaks in love. No, you begin to listen to the voice of condemnation. And the voice begins to tell you you're a failure. You've always been a failure. I mean, it's the reason why your dad left you. I mean, your dad left you because he didn't want you. And because your dad didn't want you, other people don't want you, so you're going to fail at every relationship. Of course she didn't accept the date with you. Why would she want to accept the date with you? Because, I mean, after all, no one would want to be with you. And we keep struggling in decisions because in that moment, we're tuned into this voice of condemnation because we keep asking the question, I. And God says, the reason you're so freaked out right now is because you're tuning into the wrong thing. The voice of God will never condemn. The voice of God for children of God will always lovingly correct us in the right path we need to go. So if it's a voice of condemnation, I can go, I got to turn the channel. I'm trying to give you some help because some of you are getting freaked out in your decision making, not because God is against you, because you're tuning into the wrong station. God says, I'm not going to condemn you. I condemn Jesus Christ on your behalf. Why would I condemn you? That I want to love you. I'm going to bless you. I'm going to lead you to good places. So we go, okay, I'm turning the channel. And what we begin to turn to many times, we turn into the channel of pressure. And the reason we feel pressure in the moment is we begin to turn into the mindset that says, you better make the right decision because you only get one shot. And it starts early. Right? Well, if you don't get all honor roll and you don't graduate summa cum laude pade, whatever it is, if you don't graduate at the top of your class, then you can't get into the top school. If you don't get into the top school, you're not going to get top pay. And if you don't get top pay, you're going to end up on the street. And if you end up on the street, you're going to become a crack dealer. If you become a crack dealer, you're going to spend the rest of your life in prison. And you're at 13, you're worried about being a crack dealer and arrested for federal charges. And you're all messed up and it's freaking you out because you're thinking to yourself, I can't blow this decision. I can't blow this decision. I can't blow this decision. And God says, who's telling you that? Well, I'm struggling now because, I asked her out on a date and she said no, but what if she's the one that God says, you're my soulmate? And if she says no and I say yes and she continues to say no, and that means if I marry somebody else, do I commit adultery? God, what is going on? I mean, I don't know. I mean, you haven't even gone on the first date yet and you're already worried about adultery because she said she said no. And you're freaking out because you put so much pressure on yourself because you think to yourself, you have limited opportunity and limited resources. And we do this with our kids, don't we? Well, you gotta be on the Little League team. And not only on the Little League team, you gotta make sure you have the right coaches because you gotta make it on into the, professional baseball because that's the way that you're gonna get out of this place. And we keep pushing this and we think to ourselves, we've destroyed our kids because we haven't signed them up for Little League and soccer and football and made sure they're on the chess team, dance team because we want them to be eclectic and all these other things. And it's freaking us out because we worried, well, now I screwed my kid up because I didn't give them everything they needed in the moment. And God says, hold on. You're tuned into the wrong thing. Last time I looked, I'm the God who wants to bless you, not curse you. I'm not trying to get out to destroy you. I'm trying to get you out to bless you. You're tuning into the wrong station. And for some of you, you've been tuning into the station of fear for a long time. And when you listen to fear, all you hear is, well, you got to control people and manipulate situations. And so you keep trying to control and keep trying to control and keep trying to control, but it's this elusive thing because every time you try to control, you have more fear. And every time you have more fear, you try to control. And it's just this reciprocal effect that you're in this craziness of going insane because you're trying to manipulate people, manipulate situations, and it's never working out the way you want it to. And God says, I know, because I'm trying to remind you, you're not in control. You see, I can't listen to the voice of God if I'm not tuned in to the right voice. And God says, I'm not trying to curse you. I'm trying to bless you. I'm always going to speak in love to you. I'm always going to speak in love to you. But you can't hear God's voice if you're only listening to you. And God says, I'm trying to get you to switch the channel. I'm trying to get you to tune into the right frequency because I want you to know the language that God speaks over you is the language of love. And so when I understand that, it gives me the ability in the moment to make decisions because I know that God will always lead me to make decisions that are based on love. God's always leading me to make decisions based on what's the most loving thing to possibly do. I mean, think about what would change if this became the grid in which every decision that you make. Love. What do? I don't know, but I know I need to love. What do I do in my marriage? I don't know, but I know I need to love. What do I do with raising my kids? I don't know, but I know I'm to love. What I'm to do with my neighbor who keeps getting on my nerves? What do I do? What do I do? I don't know, but I know you need to love. What do I do with the boss who keeps messing with me? I just hate my boss. I don't know, but I know I'm to love. See, Jesus had all the power. He could do whatever he wanted to, but he chose to love. And Jesus says, this is how you're going to be known as my disciples. This is how you're going to be known that you're my followers, by your love one for another. And so we ask, what would love do? Because love gives us the direction that we need. No matter what you're facing, God will always speak in love. If the situation that you're trying to answer in the direction you're trying to take is not filled with love, that's not from God. Now, that doesn't mean you just let people get away with whatever they want to get away with. That's not love, that's enablement. I love my kids, and because I love my kids, I make them go to bed and brush their teeth, even when they don't want to go to bed and brush their teeth. Because I love them. So love means sometimes you're going to have tough conversations. Love means that we're going to sit down and we're going to have this conversation. Even though I don't want to have this conversation, we're going to have it because love moves in instead of backs away. That love has tough conversation, and love at times says no because I know what is best and I love you, and out of love for you, I can't say yes to you. And so we come and we listen because God's going to speak love and always direct by love. And so that's why Jesus says, you already know what to do. You do what love will do. I'm trying to liberate you as best as I can. I'm trying to preach as hard as I can to liberate you because you keep freaking out and you've complicated something that Jesus says, don't complicate it. But there's something else that's powerful because he gets to the point, he says, a new command I give to you. Well, what's new about this command, Jesus? It doesn't mean new in time. He could have used a distinct word from that. But he said, it's new in understanding. I want you to love one another. Now, that's been all throughout the Old Testament. And so the disciples are going, well, that's not new, Jesus. I mean, we read that from the book of Moses. That's not new. And Jesus said, no. What is new is how I'm about to show you to do it. As I have loved you, so you must also love one another. See, and whenever you think, well, how far does this go? Jesus says, as far as I'm willing to go for you. Well, Jesus, how do I get out of this? And Jesus says, as far as I went for you. And just to let you know how far Jesus went to love you, he went all the way of laying down his life for you so that you can be completely forgiven and loved by God. And he looks at you and looks at me and says, now go do likewise. For by this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, my followers, literally, that you will know that I'm leading you. How? Because of your love one for another. I'm calling you to love. I'm calling you to love. And so we ask the question, well, why? Why do I need to do that? Not only does it open my life up to hear from God, because God always speaks in love, but love opens your life to actually make a difference. Love actually opens your life to begin to make a difference. What happens is that we see life as a destination. And what freaks us out in this decision is we go, well, I'll be happy when? I'll be happy when I get married. And so we freak out because we go, okay, is she the one to marry or not one to marry? Is he the one to marry or not the one to marry? And we're freaking out because we keep looking at life as going to be this destination. Well, what job do I take? When I get the perfect job, I'll be happy. And so we're going through life and we're freaking out because we take all these things. What am I going to do for retirement? What am I going to do without this? What am I going to do? 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 And we're always thinking that somehow if we can make the right decision and land here, then we'd finally be happy. If we could just get here, we'd finally have peace. If we could just get here, wherever here is for you, if we could just get here, then all of a sudden all our troubles in the world would be gone. Life will be great. It will be amazing. It will be incredible. It will be sweet. So we look at life as a series of destination. I got to make the right decision to get to that destination. But it's incredible. Here's what's amazing. When God looks at your life, he doesn't look at a particular destination. He looks at over your life, begins to look at the decisions you're making in the opportunities that you have. See, we think the importance is in the destination. Jesus is telling us in this moment, it's not about arriving somewhere. It's about what are you doing with the opportunity you have to love now? How am I leveraging the opportunities I have now to make a difference in the people's lives around me? We get consumed on what job? What am I going to do in my job? What am I going to do in my job? And Jesus says, I'm going to make it easy for you. Love in your job and I'll bless it. What school do I go to? I'm going to talk about this next week. You don't want to miss next week of this series. We're going to talk about the most liberating principle you've ever had in your life. The principle that has freed me from every bad decision and has freed me from the fear of making decisions. It's the one question you don't want to miss next week. But I want to camp out here because this is so powerful. Verse 17, Jesus says, now that you know these things, turn to your neighbor and say, now you know. Come on, say it with some cockiness in your face. I mean, like, now you know. You will be blessed if you do them. You'll be blessed, not if you think about them, not if you pray about them. You'll be blessed if you actually what? You begin to do them. So he says, what I want you to do is I want you actually to begin to do this. Now, what makes me blessed? What makes me blessed? We think what's going to make me blessed is when I reach a destination. But what if we got it all wrong? What if the joy in life is not some destination we arrive at? But what if the joy in life is knowing that God is using us in the decisions that we're making, and as we live in those decisions to love, we actually make a difference, that God is not only working in us, but he's working through us in the situation we're a part of. What if we get so consumed on the wrong thing? What if our whole mindset is we keep thinking we reach a destination, and God is saying the whole time, it's not about a destination, it's about using the decisions you have now, the opportunities to make a difference in the people around you. As I thought about this in my life, I thought about who have the people that made the greatest impact in my life. And so I began to just list them. I began to think of them, and I began to just list them out. You know what's incredible about the people I thought in my life? Many of them, I don't know what they did for a living. I don't know what house they lived in. I can't even remember what car they drove. But hold on. This one hit me. I don't remember none of that, but how much of their time did they spend consumed on that? How much of their time did they worry, well, what job do I take? What car do I drive? What do I do in retirement? What house do I live in? Where do I go to college? And as I look back on my life, and as I looked at those who had the greatest impact on me, it wasn't the destination they arrived at. It wasn't, hey, because they drove this car, they made an impact in my life. Hey, because they worked at this job, they made an impact in my life. Hey, because they retired this way, they had an impact in my life. Because they lived in Heathrow or they lived in the bowels of Deltona, they made an impact in my life. It doesn't matter. You see what Jesus is saying? It doesn't matter. What mattered was the difference that they made in the season that I was in. That they chose to love me, and they made that decision, and because of that decision, it made a difference in me. When you look at the people in your life, who made the greatest impact in your life? People who proved the point or pursued you? People who lived their life for a job or people who poured their life into you? And those who poured their life into you, those who made a real difference in your life, it didn't matter what job they had. It didn't matter what car they drove. It didn't matter if they were in a Tesla or a donkey. It doesn't matter. Turn to your neighbor and say, it doesn't matter. Then why does it matter to you? You see what Jesus is doing? Ooh, he's good, isn't he? You see what he's doing? He says, what you're trying to do is you get so consumed. You get so consumed on this destination thinking, I got to make this decision to get here. And Jesus says, what if it's not even that point? What if the whole point is I'm giving you an opportunity to love me, because when you love me and love others in that situation, you'll make a difference. I don't matter what job you have. It doesn't matter what car you drive. It doesn't matter what you freak out and worry about at night. What if the big thing that I wanted you to do was utilize the time and opportunities you had to make a difference in the people around you? So he looks at you and looks at me and says, now that you know these things, do them. Do them. And that got me thinking, what if? What if just I can't speak to all the United States. I can't speak to the world. I can't speak to Congress, and I can't speak to senators. But I can speak to those that call Journey Church their home. And it gets me thinking. What if this was our question? What would happen? And let's not say, hey, we're going to ask this question for 1 year. No. We're going to ask this question for a month. No. What if just on one day? What if just on one day we began to ask a question that would change everything? What if on just one day we all gathered together, whether we watched in Puerto Rico or whether we watched in Wisconsin, whether we watched in Alaska, whether we were part of our in-person in Deltona or DeLand or Orange City, it doesn't matter. What if we lived in Heathrow all the way down, all the way up to Astor? What if it was all the way from Samsula, all the way to Daytona Beach, all the way down to Mayland? What if those who call the journey home, what if just one day we asked the question, what would love do? What would love do? What would love do? What would love do? And it got me thinking, it would change our community. And so we began to pray, how can we get just for one day, for every single person that calls Journey Church home, to say, I'm not going to ask, what about me? What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? But if they begin to ask, God, what would love do? And that's where this whole idea of Serve Day came about. So we decided to put one day on the calendar for us to show our community the love of Jesus Christ in a very practical way. So what I'm asking you, I'm not asking you to ask this question for the next year. I'm just asking you to ask this question for one day. To think about it, what would happen if thousands of us all across Volusia County and Seminole County and Orange County and Lake County and Flagler County, all the way across the sea for those who are watching in Guam, to those who are watching in Puerto Rico, I mean, over and over, it's amazing. What would happen if just we were where we were at, we begin to say, God, what would love do? And on one day, we would stop asking the question, what do I do? What do I do? And we would begin to ask God, what would love do? This is how we make a difference. This is how communities change. This is how world change. This is how we make an impact in the people around us. This is why Jesus says, and the whole world will know. They will know me by the way that you love. So here's what I'm asking you. I'm asking for one day. I know you're busy, but what are you busy doing? I know your schedule is packed. I know. I'm just asking for one day. I'm asking us for May 6th, every person who calls the journey home, whether you've been here for one day or whether you've been here for years, I'm asking on this one day, let's come together. Let's come together and let's ask a better question. What would love do? Let's ask a question that changes everything, that still has the power to change the world and change people. In just a minute, I'm going to ask all of our LPs, our location pastors, to come up both online in Deltona, DeLand, and Orange City and share with you specifically what that looks like for your direct location. But what I'm asking is, let's just pause long enough to ask a question that would give us the clarity and the direction we need to hear the voice of God. What would love do? Will you pray with me? Lord, so we ask, speak, Lord. Your servant is listening. God, would you allow that question to be the question that changes our lives? Will you allow it to be that changes the trajectory of who we are as a church, as a people? God, what would love do? In the middle of what do I do in this relationship? What would love do in this relationship? In the middle of the job situation that you're struggling with, what would love do in the middle of the struggle? In the middle of the fights that you're having, what would love do? In the middle of the mess, what would love do? Just ask it. And God, would you speak loud, because we know you speak in the language of love. Help us to tune into the frequency. And God, I pray on May 6th, I pray that the kingdom would come and your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. God, I pray that you would shift atmospheres in the spiritual world and begin to bring your kingdom when the people of God begin to come by the Spirit of God based on the testimony of Jesus Christ and ask a better question. God, what would love do? From every life group, for every person, from every 6-year-old to 66 years old, God, no matter who they are, God, would you allow us to be a people that are defined by our love? And so, God, we commit ourselves. God, we might not know what to do in the moment, but we know we're called to love. So let us live this way and let us make a difference in the world around us.